hasn't spoken. Prem, what does New America One Malaysia mean to you?
Hello, Jamie. After these two fantastic politicians, remarkable triathlete from the US and a charming young woman from competitive online media, sitting next to the senior VP of an organization I shall not name. I've been said that I should not name that organization. It's a tough act to follow, but thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak. Asia 21 is a great network to be in. I think that we see New America One Malaysia and all the political change we're going to. I think we focus a lot on leadership. I mean, Asia 21 is about leadership. But if I could take a single contrarian view and say yes, leadership is important, but what else? What else is happening? What else do we not see? And I think I would like to give the contrarian view in order to just provide some balance to the conversation. So while we focus on the top, let's look a little deeper. What's happening in society? What's happening to people? What are they doing? What are they thinking? And I come from the new media background, and there's some very interesting lessons that we see here. Change is everywhere. Technology is driving change. Economic crisis is driving change. Flu, H1N1 flu is driving change, and everything is driving change. And yet, change is very slow. The old paradigms that we've lived in for centuries are actually not changing very, very fast. The old powers to be, still hold on to power. Khairy mentioned about hegemony and US role in hegemony. Well, in Malaysia we have a hegemonic power too. People sometimes say that Barisan Nasional is in power, but actually the single party which is Barisan Nasional actually dictates much of the decisions which happen in this country. I think I just lost my mic. Did I lose my mic? Okay.
Trying to run away from you.
So we have hegemonic powers here in Malaysia, and hegemonic powers that are trying to be inclusive, trying to give a new discourse, some of which we see behind us. But what is really happening, what for me the lessons are, is that as this change is happening, the old bastions of power are finding it harder and harder to compete and to maintain their power. In journalism, you see a lot of newspapers facing major crises, very much in the US and in many other countries. I think here in Malaysia also, you see the old big industrial newspapers having a very tough time. And I'm happy to say that a lot of people are actually moving to the internet, adopting new technologies, mobile technologies, and actually getting information elsewhere. And of course, Prime Minister Badawi said after the March election, his biggest mistake was to underestimate the internet. And I think the BN has trying to put a lot of work into recapturing the ground of the internet. So yet, as we move from one model to another model, we look at internet and you look at journalism, and really there's no solid model for journalism. That actually nobody actually wants to pay for journalism. People are rather read free stuff, read blogs. Most advertising revenue is actually going to Google and Yahoo. People ask why is Malaysiakini not free? The answer is that really there's not that much advertising revenue on the online business to actually pay for good and serious journalism, and that's why we have to charge. So what I'm saying is that as one model is strengthened, the other model is not fully developed. As we go from the 60s and 70s, era of hegemony or bipolar world, US hegemony, Soviet hegemony. Today we live in a much more flux world, yet that world is not crystallized. There is no clear structure of what the world is. Increasingly, the problems we face are much more complex. Look at climate change. Look at the energy crisis. So the old order, the old paradigm is actually breaking down, and it's precisely why these reasons that new changes are happening. Obama only won because George W. Bush was such a failure. I would like to ask you that question. I think Obama should thank George W. Bush for paving the way, for clearing the streets for a guy like Obama to rise up. Under any other condition, Hillary Clinton would have won. But George W. Bush, I would argue, pissed off so many people that people said, well, it's time for some drastic change, and let's go all the way with this change. So people are in the mood for the change, but it's only because a very strong structure that pervaded our industrial society are giving way. And if we look forward to the new society, we see much more the appearance of self-organization as a key mode of production. Ken is from Mozilla Foundation. How many of you use Firefox? Come on, let's be honest. Wow, that's a great number. Fantastic. So you see, Firefox is born out of open source. And you can see the collaboration, creating this technology. You see blogs, emerge as a very strong foundation for internet. In the US, Huffington Post has become a very dominant media made out of multiple people who are blogging and driving opinion in the US. Creative content is taking up. Music labels are dying. Independent music is thriving around the world. Everywhere we see that the power which used to reside in these big, hegemonic organizations, institutions, are eroding towards a more middle ground. Still, the poor have not gained power. They still don't have access to much of the technology and power. But you see the middle ground actually taking work. Obama couldn't have won. Dr. Metzl pointed out these little donations, 10, 20, $50 donations. But that couldn't have happened without the internet, without the mechanism to collect that money, to organize. Obama used myBarackObama.com, a very powerful internet tool which allowed people to self-organize. I used Facebook to advertise this event. How many of you heard about this event from Facebook? Oh, fantastic, a good half audience. I think we only announced the event on Thursday. And all of you self-organized, and came here today, and this room is packed with fantastically interesting people, coming here today. So what I'm trying to argue is that while we focus on leadership, to a certain extent leadership is, are we talking about leadership as in the old paradigm of hegemony, or are we talking leadership as a facilitator of a new, more self-organizing society? A new society which looks around and says, yes, we can organize, we can redistribute power, and through this redistribution of power, we make new claims on government and on the state. So, I would like to offer that contrarian view to just juxtapose the value we place on leadership against the value we place on ourselves. The Malaysian political tsunami wouldn't have happened without people themselves daring to make change. And how did that happen? Somehow they got together and actually made change. So I think that it's great that we have a new America and one Malaysia, but until the political systems that we have adopt to this new self-organizing society, I think we're still going to face challenges. And the new can never be born, totally overnight. It's always a challenge, it's always a very, one step forward, two steps back kind of process. And there's a lot of frustration. I think I talked to many of my friends, and they're very frustrated with, Pakistan Rakyat. They felt that, the changes that Pakistan Rakyat should bring at the state level should happen overnight. But there's a lot of frustration that these changes actually have not happened. And there's a lot of hope on Najib, but the question is, can he really add substance to his one Malaysia claim? So I'm very interested in a new America, one Malaysia, but I think we should look at it a little more of a complex phenomena, and as young leaders, understand the underlying dynamics which is happening, which is driving this process. Thank you.
That's really interesting because Prem has brought up some sort of interesting trends that's been happening, paradigm breaking, conventional capitalism sort of models, breaking down, powers that we used to seeing as powers are now not powerful anymore, and people are organizing themselves and taking on the responsibility